Considering the countless battles they've had over the past decade, Chris Paul to the Warriors almost feels like a fever dream. But it's not the walking 20-10 offensive surgeon that Golden State's getting, rather a 38-year-old undersized point guard who showed some serious signs of regression. This rightfully calls into question what exactly we can expect to see from CP3 and how he actually fits into the Warriors system. When Steve Kerr was asked to...
Yo, bro, if CP3 has a second wind, shit is crazy. Because if you guys don't remember, after 2019, a lot of people were already calling Chris Paul washed. And then he goes to OKC and has a resurgent year there. And then he goes to Phoenix and has a resurgent... No, not a resurgent. He continues, the good season that he had. And then he had that ass season in Phoenix, which I believe was 2021. And then he got traded. And now he's where he is. You know what I'm saying? But it's interesting, though. If Chris Paul has another resurgence, that'd be kind of crazy.
To speak on the trade and where he feels Chris can make an impact, his response was simple. The Warriors were first in the NBA in pace last season, but also first in turnovers. And with Paul, you get someone who can control games and protect the ball in key moments. Until the day he retires, he'll be one of the best passers, decision makers, and floor generals the game's ever seen.
I will say that.
And when you pair that with a flawless handle, someone who can operate through even the tightest quarters with complete security, you're left with someone who just simply doesn't turn it over. What you're looking at right here is a graph showing the difference between how much time a player spends per game with the ball in his hands and how much he turns it over. All the way in the top right, you'll find the most heliocentric offensive engines.
You're about to pull a Jimmy High roller, yo.
Every possession goes through them, so naturally they'll turn it over at a decently high rate. But with Chris Paul, you have a real high time of possession, except he's turning the ball over less than 2 times a game. And maximizing every possession like this is super important, especially come playoff time. Real quick before we leave, I also want to shout out Jalen Brunson because that mark is absolutely absurd. Just because Chris tends to play a slower, methodical game doesn't mean that he can't still play with pace. Just that it's under a lot more control, patiently mapping the court and looking for teammates to hit with freebies. That's another thing Kerr mentioned. Paul should seamlessly adapt to some of what the Warriors like to do. He can grab and go, throws the ball ahead quickly with pinpoint accuracy, so they can still maintain that high voltage run and gun style of offense, just while cutting down on the errors that come with it. Finding a better balance between pushing, slowing it down, and maximizing every possession should help the team be more efficient offensively, while also eliminating some of those defensive plays where they find themselves out of position after a careless mistake on the other end. In the half court, it's still pretty much...
I don't think the problem or even the question was ever offensively with Chris Paul going to the Warriors. And maybe I'm capping now. Maybe that's some revisionist history on my part. But I always felt like the problem was defense. And just like moving the needle like 2 inches to the right. You know what I'm saying? Because even if hypothetically Chris Paul and Steph Curry offensively just make it work, their magic when they're on the court. What is that looking like defensively, though? Chris Paul and Steph Curry as their backcourt, that looks kind of scary. Klay Thompson, I'm assuming, would be your 3 in that instance, and Klay Thompson is not the two-way beast Klay Thompson that he used to be. You know what I'm saying? So with Chris Paul, I think those are the questions when it comes to his fit on the team. I don't even think it's offense. Because offense, I think they're going to be straight. They might even supersede expectations at this point with the way people are talking. But defensively, I don't know. And ultimately, if this literally still caps off at a second round exit, then I think the concerns were valid. But
always going to be the timeless pick and roll game for the point guard. He's a master of setting up his defender to run him into the screen. First using a little half spin as if looking to attack left before turning back to his right so that Morant is completely blindsided by Ayton. Now he's left with a ton of space to attack Steven Adams and gets to the free throw line for an easy 2. Here's another example, using multiple half spins, hesitations, and head fakes to keep Javon Carter guessing so that when he finally uses the screen, he's able to get in front of his man and play the in-between game.
Underrated.
And because he's so easily able to force his man into contact with the screener, it's pretty much always going to be an automatic advantage. This is another one where he first fakes an attack to the left before spinning back to his right, and with DeAndre Jordan recovering to take away the nail, Paul's gonna snake the screen, going back to his left, and just like that, there's nobody to contest his jumper. Considering that the Warriors have 2 of the best illegal screeners we've ever seen in Draymond and Looney, and 2 of the best shooters we've ever seen in Steph and Clay, I'd expect Paul to come off of these actions with the most space he's ever had to operate with. It's no secret that what he's looking to do is get to that mid-range. At his peak, he had one of the league's deadliest in-between games, and although it's not quite at that level anymore, it's still very much there. Last year, he took about 7.5 mid-range shots every 75 possessions and hit 48% of them. There were only 11 other players who reached both of those marks. The way he pairs the mid-range game with his traditional point guard skills makes him a master of playing cat and mouse with opposing defenses. If bigs drop back, well, he'll just get to that elbow for automatic offense. If they come up a bit closer to the level, taking away that space for a pull-up jumper, then he'll just move it over to the roller for some easy offense at the rim. If the big makes an effort to take away the midi, and then another defender slides over to tag the roller, he'll kick it to the open shooter for a high-quality three-pointer. And finally, if the big decides to switch, even though he's not quite as shifty as he once was, he's still more than capable of attacking these mismatches in isolation.
Is that Drake?
While most of his pick and roll play takes place inside the arc, I do think he still has some utility coming off of high ball screens in a more spread pick and roll type of setup, which is typically what the Warriors like to go to. He's a capable off the dribble 3-point shooter to some extent. Like, he's more than comfortable stepping into them against softer coverages and can create space through some nice footwork, but I think the loss of legs hurts his effectiveness. He tends to miss a lot of these opportunities short. With that said though, it's a threat that the defense still respects. You can see Naz Reid coming all the way up to the level so that Paul can't step into a jumper, and he leverages that threat into a sharp bounce pass to Ayton as he walks into an open dunk.
Yo, Cardi, Draymond really gotta play the 5, bro. if they really want this shit to be remotely effective, Draymond gotta play the 5, bro. He gonna clog up the lane, and even then, bro, Draymond's finishing ability isn't even like that, bro. Jesus Christ.
That's not to say Chris is perfect by any means. He's probably the worst player in the NBA when it comes to pressuring the rim. Last season, he attempted just half of a shot at the rim every 75 possessions and converted 46% of the time. According to Thinking Basketball's database, both of those marks land in the 0th percentile. Because he doesn't get deep into the paint, that also means he's not going to generate many free throws. Despite having every single trick in the book, a little grifting, and just some nasty work, he's only good for about 3 free throws a game. The overall result is not so efficient scoring. 57% of his shots came in the mid-range, and without superb 3-point shooting or free throws, that led to the least efficient season of his career by far, more than 3% below the league's average. You also have the age factor. He just isn't conditioned to play big minutes without taking plays off, which was especially noticeable throughout Phoenix's last few playoff runs, just disappearing for entire stretches of games and conserving energy so that he could close in the fourth,
so close.
Which works sometimes, but not all the time. There's also the injury concerns. He's definitely been better in recent years at staying on the floor, but it remains a question mark, and last year was the first year, in my opinion, where his age really started to show. 2023 Chris Paul looked like a very different version than what he was producing in his other 2 years as a Sun. With all of that said, in the words of Steve Kerr, CP3 is a player that quite literally always gives you a good chance to get a good shot through that pick and roll game. Except Golden State's never been...
Who the fuck is he running the pick and roll with? again, correct me if I'm wrong, Draymond Green is not a great pick and roll big man. He's great at setting off-ball screens, but is he great at running the pick and roll with? I don't think so. Kevon Looney? I guess. Come bucket? Come bucket? So now you have to start come bucket over Draymond Green. And that's you know what I'm saying?
A ball-dominant, spread pick-and-roll type of team. So where does this skill set actually fit? My first thought is that he'll be the one running the second unit, which is a big deal because they tend to collapse whenever Steph goes to the bench. Since 2021, the Warriors have had a 117 offensive rating with Steph on the floor. Expect from units and such as Jonathan Kuminga as a downhill threat and explosive roller, or Moses Moody as a shooter and off-the-catch weapon. The pick and roll game also adds a wrinkle to their starting and closing lineups. Sometimes the motion can stagnate, or defenses do a great job of covering, and it's just another avenue for when things start to tighten up. It's clear to me that Paul's still going to exert most of his value with the ball though. So how exactly does he fit into the motion offense when he's sharing the floor with their big three? There's virtually no off-ball movement in his game. He's not a threat to cut or finish at the rim, so most of the time he's just stationary and waiting for something to happen. In these spots, he's still a major threat to finish plays though because of his outside shooting.
Yeah,
since 2021, he's hit 45% of his wide open threes and 46% of his catch and shoot threes. Now, only 205 catch and shoot attempts over 3 seasons isn't a great sample, but he's consistently been great in this department since the tracking started back in 2014, whether that was in LA, Houston, or OKC.
I like Chris Paul's shot
so I
too.
feel confident in saying that he can maintain it. Another thing to consider is that the idea behind the motion offense is that there's never too much passing on the floor, and he's a guy who will exploit errors caused by the gravity of shooters or screeners and make all of the connective extra passes. If you remember Game 7 of the first round against Sacramento, one way the Warriors countered the blitz was by putting their best passer on the wing. So instead of Steph making a direct pass to the roller, he'd move it over to an easier angle to clear the paint. Here's another example. Looney sets the screen and rolls hard, and because Steph passes and relocates, Draymond can either hold and play the two-man game or fire an extra pass to Looney, who then makes a find of his own to Wiggins for an easy 2. Just imagine it's Chris Paul who's spotted up on that wing. You still have just about everything you get with Draymond, except he's also a league best spot-up shooter, and that sounds like a nightmare to cover. Because CP3 can take on the role of an initiator,
Draymond better be able to finish like Andrew Wiggins though.
Within Golden State's system, I don't actually question the fit much at all. And then when the bench comes in, you're left with a floor general who's going to make the right decision with the ball pretty much every single time. So I definitely think we can expect to see the Warriors either maintain or improve upon their offense from last season. But what about the other side of the ball? Simply put, you could make the argument that in man-to-man scenarios, he's a liability against all 5 positions at this point.
Oh God.
Someone opposing offenses will absolutely hunt for on switches.
Nobody going to
With
work.
the loss of agility, he struggles keeping the ball in front of him, but he's also the smallest player on the floor most of the time, so he can get overpowered by everyone. When a screen comes, he's pretty much guaranteed to die on it, meaning he really can't offer much resistance at the point of attack. One thing he does have working for him though is the IQ and how good he actually is at seamlessly executing switches. Off the screen, he immediately picks up the ball and tries to stay attached over the top, and when he's beat, he knows to peel back to the roll, and although his size prevents him from offering serious resistance, just being in the right spot can go a long way.
I think ultimately though, again, with the Warriors, Chris Paul can help out in certain regards. I think they do need more on-ball creation. They do need more passing on this team. They do need more floor generals on this team. And Chris Paul, even at his old-ass age, can still provide that for this team. However, I'm going to keep it a bean, though. The X factor for the Warriors, to me, is Draymond Green. He's like what I talked about with Trae Young earlier, chat, but in reverse. You know what I'm saying? Like, Draymond Green is so important to the Warriors' defense that he needs to be on the court a lot. He needs to, you know what I'm saying? And to the, you know, chemistry of the team. Draymond Green is so important to the chemistry of that team, the makeup of that team mentally. But more importantly, defensively, he brings so much value to them. However, again, opposite with Trae Young, opposite of Isaiah Thomas, offensively, at this point in Draymond's career, literally the only thing he can provide is, a couple layups in a game, maybe one dunk, and a couple free throws, and ultimately passing, just passing is his main, you know what I'm saying? His main attribute offensively. His scoring deficiencies are going to hurt this team, is essentially what I'm getting at. His scoring deficiencies. Shout out to Eczema for the sub. I appreciate you. His scoring deficiencies for this team needs to be addressed somehow, some way. I think it's going to limit their offense so much with the fact that they literally do not respect Draymond Green's scoring ability. They can sag off of him from the three because he shoots, 28% from three. He's not a great finisher at the rim, even going downhill. He's not a lob catching big. He never was a lob catching big. He cannot create a shot on his own. You know what I'm saying? It's just nasty out there with Draymond. Shout out to Cardiac for the sub, bro. Mod Cardiac. Hey, shout out to everyone subbing right now, man. Halfway through the sub goal. Halfway through the stream sub goal. But yeah, I think Draymond Green ultimately is going to be the X factor for this team. And it is just like what I'm questioning with the Warriors is like, what would it take for the Warriors to trade Draymond at this point? Because I feel like at this point, they've committed so much to the Steph, Clay, and Dre trio that, like, if they trade Draymond Green, they might as well just give up on the Steph, Clay, Dre era in their franchise and just blow it up. You know what I'm saying? So it's looking like the answer is nothing. But shout out to Hoop Venue. I think I've got the gist of his video, though. There's about like 3 minutes left. But shout out to Hoop Venue, though.